Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has now had its opening weekend. Let's talk about it. Hi everybody, Oliver the Ricketts here, in a little bit of a format break, so hopefully you can forgive that. Obviously this one is all audio. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one being that I'm working on a much larger project than usual. That's taking up a lot of my creative efforts. Anybody who watches the channel knows that I don't talk about movies all the time, but if I do see a movie that I either really love or really hate and have strong opinions about, I'll take the time out to make a video about that movie. The problem is all of my videos take a lot of effort, all of the edits, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but the edits on my videos are what they call in the industry nice. It's a lot of steps to do a video that talks about somebody else's work that then takes me away from doing my own work. Does that make sense? I hope so. So we're gonna try this out for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because I wasn't gonna let this movie go without talking about it. And you know what? I miss the podcast days. I miss being a broadcaster. So join me, won't you? And let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So before we get into talking about the movie, I did record a little TikTok/YouTube short walking into and then walking out of the movie. So let's play that and you can get my initial thoughts.
Got out, and I just want to say I don't see the cynical movie that a lot of people are complaining about. This was so hopeful and so perfect. Easily my favorite Marvel trilogy. Wow. 5 stars.
So as you can see, I'm a big fan. I stand by that 5-star A+ rating. It's not rare for me to see a movie that I like in theaters. Here's a list of all the movies that I've liked so far this year. It is, however, rare for me to walk out of a movie and go, I love this movie. And that's something that happened to me on Guardians 1 and Guardians 2. And even though I'm still a huge fan of the MCU, I will say it's been a little bit since they've given me that reaction to one of their movies, other than Spider-Man No Way Home, which is its own kind of thing. Now, that's not to say that I'm sitting here saying, oh, it's a Marvel movie, expectations automatically lower. I find that so annoying. You know, the crowd that's on Twitter and goes, oh, I have superhero fatigue. And so every time you bring up a superhero movie, I need to tell you how fatigued I am and how superhero movies are played out. And me, I'm looking to see films. It's doubly exhausting to hear from these people talking about how they don't like Marvel movies, like almost more than the amount of Marvel stuff that we're getting. And I think it's funny because Twitter almost universally has decided this is a good movie, a great movie actually. But how many people are like, well, this is the one where I'm done with the MCU. I get that James Gunn's not going to be there anymore, but this movie is truly special, and for what it's worth, they did put out Spider-Man No Way Home just recently, and I also thought Black Panther Wakanda Forever was an awesome movie. And don't even get me started on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I think that movie's incredibly underrated. But Marvel definitely still has the ability to give us something that we want. It just needs to make less stuff, I think, because you can tell this movie is a labor of love, and it's not beholden to this movie needs to come out at this time and set up this thing. What you get is a movie that feels like a film. And I've spent the last, well, when did I see it? Thursday? Since then, I've been living in this world in my head. I've been thinking about it non-stop. When I get in my car, I put on that soundtrack and I drive around just listening to the Guardians music. Everyone I know wants to talk about this with me, and I want to talk about it with them. And that way, I think James Gunn has delivered a really, really special piece. One that definitely holds up with Guardians 1 for sure, which is a top tier Marvel movie, and some people would tell you the best Marvel movie. But the real test for me is that I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's a movie that hit me very specifically. Like, there was one point in my life where I was going through some things that are reflected like heavily in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And the fact of the matter is that these things I was going through happened to me about 2 weeks before I saw the movie itself. When you get to the end of Volume 2 and Yondu says he may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy. That sent me the first time I saw it. It is one of 2 movies that have made me cry in the movie theater. Guess what the second one is? I'll play you the clip of why it makes me cry now.
And now when I watch it today, it's not the same thing that gets me. The movie's evolved as I've gotten older, because now I can get through that part no problem. But when they get to the end and they're having Yondu's funeral and Rocket says to Quill, all of the Ravagers came for him, even though he was always mean. And Quill says to Rocket, well, of course they did. And that's an unspoken thing, that we're your friends and we're your family. And oh man, it's giving me chills right now talking about it. We'll come for you when it's time too. There is nothing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that is as emotionally intelligent as that. And I don't know why this movie is so underrated, I guess.
So this movie has a high bar to hit because I think it needs to feel like the biggest of all of the Guardians movies and the most satisfying because it promises to be a conclusion and a finale for these characters who we've all loved so much for the last 9 years. And I think I might still prefer Guardians Volume 2, just personally. But I'll say this, I could feel completely differently about that tomorrow. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is every bit as mature and emotional as its 2 predecessors are. These characters feel real. We feel like we're on a journey living with them. Even the characters that I haven't loved as much on the journey thus far, i.e. Nebula, Drax, and Mantis, amazing additions to this movie. This is the most I've liked every character on the Guardians lineup. And I'll also say this movie succeeded in making me cry as well. And just the fact that it can deliver a product that is anywhere similar to what the first 2 movies were for me feels incredible. I walked out of this movie feeling so fulfilled. I've talked about how Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has been my most anticipated movie of the year, you know, because that's who I am as a person. I love Spider-Man. This is going to be very hard to top, and I'm sure I will still love Across the Spider-Verse. It looks amazing, but I don't know that it's going to serve the same emotional beats that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 does. I think it's everything that I wanted the movie to be and more. And I'm about to jump into spoilers to talk more about that, so if you haven't seen it yet, I implore you, please go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Show Marvel that when they put the time and effort into a movie and the heart that they used to have, that it will be a success. We want more of these and less Quantumanias. And I can't wait to see what James Gunn does with Superman because I think that that's going to be truly special as well. So before you click off, I'm giving Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 an A+ and 5 stars. Now let's get into spoilers about why that is. I have to commend the marketing campaign for this movie. In all seriousness, there were so many times that I thought about that trailer and actually got chills thinking about Rocket dying.
We'll all fly away together one last time.
About Drax dying. They guided us to think that that was the ending we were going towards, especially because they talked about the finale. This being a finale for the franchise, this being the last time we see this group of Guardians. But one thing that I think is cool is that the movie feels like a finale for the Guardians without killing a single member of the team. And I actually think that the emotions that they pulled out of me are a little bit different and a little bit harder to find in modern cinema. I think it's very easy to say Rocket dies in Act 3, and of course people will feel for that, because we've been on a journey with Rocket this whole time. Even Drax, who I was almost positive was not long for this world because of Batista's history with Disney, him dying in Act 2 would have been that gut punch as well. But the thing is, James Gunn didn't actually need to gut punch us to get us to feel in this movie. The fact that the movie just ends with them saying goodbye and going their separate ways, and then dancing through the pain is beautiful. And that's the word that I would use for this movie, is actually beautiful. I really love the structure of the film. When we first started getting interviews about it, so many of the interviewers were like, I love that opening song that you picked to start this movie. And I have to say I agree, but it wasn't the opening song that I was expecting. Guardians 3 opens with the acoustic version of Creep by Radiohead. So already a depressing song, and he went and he found the most depressing version of that song. And the image that we're getting as the movie opens is a group of people who have become complacent. which of course breeds depression. All of the things that are happening up until we see drunk Star-Lord are kind of happy things. You know, they're working, Mantis is dancing, it's all the characters that we know and love, but something's wrong. Rocket's sad, but he's not really sad about anything. He's just in this routine and this rut almost. And of course, once we see Peter Quill, we get kind of what's breeding this rut for the Guardians and what a mess he's been as the leader because of his mourning. But I really like the idea that the movie deals with people who have not addressed their grief and how that seeps into everyday life. And sometimes you have to just address your grief head on. And of course, by the end of the movie, they use that one music cue, This Is the Day by the band The. And if you listen to the lyrics of the song, it's this is the day your life will surely change. The Guardians all go their separate ways at the end. Every single character is doing something different with their lives. The Guardians movies have trained us to expect that they open with a big dance number, happiness, fun. That's what these movies are, right? But this movie doesn't do that. We don't get Mr. Blue Sky or Come and Get Your Love at the beginning with another character dancing. We get Rocket kind of sadly walking around nowhere, watching what his life is. But we do get that dance number. It's just at the end. When they play The Dog Days Are Over and the movie ends with all of the Guardians dancing, I think that that's beautiful. Especially when you think about how James Gunn does the motion capture for Dancing Groot, and of course Sean Gunn is the motion capture for Rocket. Literally the last image in this movie is two brothers having made this great artistic achievement, and they're just dancing, they're happy, and they're having a great time. And I guess I'm going to use the word beautiful way too many times throughout this whole thing. I think also the themes of people coming out of a depression really work for this movie. People addressing their trauma and people becoming happier as the movie goes on. And that's kind of why I said I didn't think the movie was this big cynical thing that a lot of outlets were saying it was when it first came out. It is really dark. In the beginning of the movie, you do feel this overwhelming sense of dread throughout, but they kind of take the audience on the same route that the Guardians are going on emotionally, because we move from that overwhelming feeling of dread to an ending that is pure joy, something that is reflected in the music. You're starting with things like Creep by Radiohead, but you're ending with things like Badlands and Come and Get Your Love Again, Dog Days Are Over. You're ending happy. And I thought that was a really cool structure to have with this movie. And it also, I think, led to me feeling more freely with it. This movie made me cry 3 times. And I'll tell you what the 3 times were. One of them is when Mantis and Nebula are calling Drax stupid. He's legitimately hurt. And I wouldn't say I cried there. I would say I got choked up. But the being choked up wasn't even what was happening on the screen. It was that I don't even like Drax as a character overall. I think he's been used as a one-note joke a few too many times. And maybe that's not really James Gunn's fault. Obviously, his appearance in Avengers Infinity War is a big part of what we see the character as. So when Drax suddenly becomes human again for the first time since the first movie and just shows that he's insecure. He goes, you think I'm stupid, but I love you guys. It's that feeling for me as the audience member that I actually care about Drax and Drax's emotions. That's what choked me up about it. And that was just a little one. The second being when Teefs, Floor, and Lila die. Specifically Floor saying, Rocket, Teefs, and Floor go now, like they're still gonna walk away and not be executed. And that's just because I love animals. I think any movie could have had the same thing happen to some animals and I would have felt the same. The next one was the post-credit scene where Rocket is leading the new Guardians and they're talking about what music they like the best. And Rocket says, oh, I have one and this one's kind of special. And it's Come and Get Your Love, which of course is the song that first introduced us to Peter Quill and to the Guardians. And now it's the song that will be the last thing we see or hear in the Guardians franchise. And of course the last one plays into how attached I am to all of these characters. It's when you think Rocket is going to die in the middle of the movie, right? When he goes to the afterlife and Leela tells him, you were right, we do fly in the sky and it is beautiful and it is forever. And Rocket just says, can I come? And she says, not yet. And then you see Quill and Groot on Earth and Chris Pratt really what an all-timer performance, how the emotions that he's able to pull out of you just by mourning this little CGI raccoon. And it's not like when Quill is sad that Rocket might die. It's when Rocket comes back and Quill is sobbing and he's hugging Rocket. And then it's when Groot comes over and wraps them up with his tree limbs. To me, that's the emotional high point of the movie. I wasn't even crying from sadness. I was crying from being emotionally overwhelmed because I love all of these characters so much, and that's what I said in the theater. I love them all so much. I can't believe how real they feel and how we've hit the end for this family. And that's part of the discussion about how people want to turn their nose up at specifically blockbusters and really Marvel movies right now. Of course, there's the famous Scorsese quote, and, you know, on one hand, what did you think that guy thought? He, you know, made Taxi Driver. I don't think he's going to see Avengers Infinity War. I think it's a little silly to turn your nose up at something because it makes a lot of money or because it's popular. Cinema, by definition, is something that can manipulate how you feel while you're watching it. And I think this movie actually does play on your emotions and took me on an emotional journey where I really did feel like I was viscerally moved. And so to say that that's not cinema is crazy to me. I don't think I've seen a lot of movies this year. I don't think I've felt anything like that in any other movie. This is like the most full that I've felt while watching a movie. There's the big argument about independent films don't get made as much because of Marvel, but the reality is more independent films are being made today than at any point in history. That's a fact. You can look that up. They don't do well. But Marvel has a product that people are willing to go out to the theater and see. It makes me happy when that product can also rise to the occasion and make me feel something on the level of, we'll say, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, because Scorsese's the big guy in this conversation. I had those emotions there. That's what cinema is. That's what going to the movies is about. If you're someone who loves movies, part of it is getting invested and transported into different worlds and different stories and feeling what the characters are feeling. And I think this is the only movie so far this year, and you know what, more so than any movie I saw last year, that has actually made me feel what the characters are feeling. And to the negative reviewers who are saying that the movie is too cynical or too dark or etc., we needed that so that we could feel the catharsis of the ending of this movie. And I think that's where I'm going to leave things. I think this movie is incredibly impactful and incredibly satisfying. And the emotional impact that it had on me is so deeply appreciated. Right now, it's my favorite movie of the year, and it's going to be hard to beat. It could be the best Guardians film, but I'm not ready to commit to that yet. As is, it's definitely in my top 3 MCU movies, and just something really, really special to have come out in the theater. And that's about my time, folks. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. What is your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie? And I'll see you in the next one. All right, goodbye.